Thank you for joining us. Thank you for those who waited to hear the teaching of the Lord and are interested in going deeper. Lola, where are you going? You're not interested in going deeper. You call us. We'll call you. Well, okay. Our people will call your people. All right. But yes, as I said, thank you for being the serious bunch. Please close the door for those who are on serious outside. Yeah. Just, they don't care. No, obviously we love everybody. We respect everyone's decision to grow in the knowledge of the Lord or to grow ignorant in it. It's a new year. It's a new year. It's a new year. Are you courageous enough to receive the this? Right?
And to give it back.
No, you give it both back.
That's what.
Who is courageous enough to give it back? Put your hand down. All right, thank you for joining us. And so this is where we answer questions that are submitted to us either online. I don't know if Yemi is checking online, online or via WhatsApp. And we'll also have, and also here live, we'll try and take about 5 questions maximum. And so we have 1 or 2 questions that we've been bringing from previous weeks. So and at least I'll take 1 or 2 of those. But I don't know if there are any questions. I don't know if there are any questions that have been submitted on YouTube or Facebook, or does anyone have a question here? Who has a question here? Anybody? Fumi has a question. Yeah, Fumi. Let's have Fumi's question. You didn't know it was coming to you next, first.
Yeah, so I realized I'm continually being surrounded by people or teenagers who are struggling with their faith. Either they've grown up in church, or they've, like, parents are not really serious. But at that point where they're saying, I don't know, like, okay, one actually said, "F you, God," and all that.
On the post or when they're talking to
No,
you?
no. Because they talk to me a lot, and because I allow them to express their views. So I have 2 questions regarding that. One is, do you have any resource for me? Because I don't, which leads to the second one. I don't want to be enabling, and at the same time, I don't want to be to push them away, and at the same time, I don't want to be too. So I say when they are facing issues, I say, have you prayed about it? I throw those jabs in, but I don't think it's enough. I don't know what else I can do. That's why I don't want to be too enabling, and I don't want to be too pushy. And do you have any resource for me? Yeah. So
that's a tough question. Tough context and tough questions that come out of that, but very, very relevant question. So thank you. Any other question? Hadiza.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
So my question is about denominations. Now I have this friend, or have this friend, okay. And she grew up in a white garment church, and she believes, like, she's staunch in it. There's nothing you can say to her that would move her belief, her faith, anything from the doctrine. Let me say the doctrine of that. And I don't know about anybody. I personally have, maybe because of my relationship with her, I've had a few experiences with how they operate, and it just spirituality outside it. It does not sit well with me. And then when you try somebody like that, how do you now? Because she believes she's going to heaven, and to an extent, it worries me. How do you get across to people like that? Especially if things have really worked for them in that denomination. Thank you.
Such an easy question. So yeah, me will take it. Okay, let me read that question again.
One of the workplace.
Okay.
Which one?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So first one is, oh dear. Okay. There are three questions here, so I would just take all of them. So, is City Church a Reformed Calvinist church? Do that, and I'll explain. I'll explain what that means. Do they hold all the doctrines of grace in bracket TULIP? So that's one question. Another question says is Titus 2 verse 5 says women should be workers at home. Taking historical grammatical interpretation of scriptures, is that not a biblical teaching that women today should be housewives? And then they should be housewives. Huh? So they should be housewives, Lola. So let it be on record. Lola says women should be. All right. Now, Christians, and then there's one question about Christians at work. And the person says, if I were to be a Christian doctor and I had a patient with gender dysphoria and they asked for physical surgery to change their appearance, am I allowed to do that? So gender dysphoria, like they are struggling with the sense of their gender, they feel that their gender is not incompatible with their sex, right? So they look like women, but they are men within, or they look like men physically, but they believe that they are women. So what if you're a Christian doctor and you had the ability to be able to do that? And maybe you don't even own the hospital that you are in. And so they say you should do it. Will you do it? Or if a mother sees a congenital defect in her unborn child and they ask for maybe pills to abort since the faith, to abort the child, since the faith goes against such, how do I handle such? Again, if you are a doctor, so the mother asks for it, for the pill, do you give? So basically, the person is saying, what I'm trying to say is, how do we handle things in our workplace that are in contrast to what the Bible teaches? Do we just leave our workplace or ... Okay, so Yemi, do you want to take stabs at any of them?
Wow. Okay. So this question was about someone white garment, fully believes in it. I love this question. I'll start and then I'll leave it wherever I can. So the first thing I want to say is that faith traditions and denominations spring up for many reasons, and that especially if you've grown up in Nigeria, you would find out that in spite of the problems with many denominations, you will be able to find genuine Christians in the midst, right? So let's start from that, where we don't judge a person's salvation by the church they belong to or by the denomination or tradition that they participate in. Almost every denomination I can think of, major denomination and some minor ones, you will find Christians in the midst. Even though you would be able to say from scriptures, from what we see about the Bible, that there is a lot about what they teach that departs from what we would consider Bible orthodoxy. And of more concern, apart from just maybe Christian practice, Christian life, departures would be the way of salvation, the way they prescribe that, or the way they show how God wants to save us or how God would save us. And if there's a problem with especially that way of salvation, then you are concerned that denomination will more often than not lead people into error, away from Christ, away from true salvation. So that's the problem or the worry we have, and we pray for people who find themselves in that situation. And then, of course, if you have people who are attending that, you try to highlight, first of all, what the gospel represents. My experience has always been that the same way, if you're here in City Church and you like City Church because it's been a blessing to you, everyone who belongs to a church or who chooses a church or denomination, I want to say they have received something from that denomination. And sometimes when you point out what's wrong with their church, you're almost denying the existence, their experience of a blessing, their experience of a good that they've ascribed to God. That God, through this church or denomination of people, have brought something that has benefited me in life. And so if you end up talking about that too much or start with that, it becomes you are attacking my church, right? So we always try and go to something that is centered and neutral, which is the gospel. No matter what church you belong to, you should, if you consider yourself a Christian denomination, you should subscribe to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so for a Christian who's engaged with friends, family, who are in different churches, you may or may not like something or many things about them, you always have to start with the gospel. And if you, in your engagement with them, you then discover that they do not have a true faith in the true God or in true Christ because of this so many distortions, then you would have to take them on as a missional candidate. In other words, it's just as if you have an unbeliever that you will continue to minister the gospel to. You would try as much as possible. It's not always possible. You try as much as possible to leave the issue of denomination to begin with, unless you've had so many engagements over time where you think that you've presented the gospel, you've presented the Christ of the Bible, you've presented what you think is biblical orthodoxy that should help them, and the stumbling blocks and the person is engaged with you too. And then you now have to get to the point where you may have to highlight where, it's the person tells you, oh, this is what I believe, or this is what my church believes. But as much as possible, then you would have to then go point by point as to where you think they've gone wrong. But you always try as much as possible. Don't talk about their man of God unless you come to that point. Don't talk about, don't try and disparage their experiences and all that. When I was younger, a number of the kind of churches you mentioned, we had some in our neighborhood, and I think some sort of adjacent type, mountaintop, specific garment. I think we attended a couple on special occasions, or for when you and your family is troubled, and they would say, "Oh, there's some man there. God answers his prayers," and that's still very prevalent today. And so your family, because of trouble, would go, and then the person would pray with you, and you may do it for a year, and then the trouble abates or goes away, and your parents or the people, they say, "Oh my God, the Lord answered our prayers and rescued us from this in the workplace or at home and all that because of this." So that's the difficulty you're always facing, because people feel like this church has mediated God's response, a healthy response to them. So I don't know if I've answered or just given context.
I think so. I wouldn't. Yeah, don't do things that will hinder. If we are frustrated about what they believe, let's not be frustrated with them. Nobody has been converted through frustration, ever. So it will only just push them further away. So if we are frustrated, take it to God. Take your frustration to God. But continue to maintain that relationship. Jeremy has said also, be careful, because you said, and this is a mistake a lot of people make, and I'm happy you pointed it out, that actually some of those people, they've had good experiences there. And sometimes you see some people trying to do their best to convince somebody that they didn't have a good experience. Like, how does that? Because it can't be, because it's a wrong church. So it cannot be. And the person is looking at you like, you look deluded. Like, the more you do that, the more they are like, even if I leave this place, I'm surely not coming to where you are, because you're trying to tell me. And let's have empathy there. If you love your church, if you love the things you belong to, at least know that some people also think it's wrong. You believe it's right. So at least, take that same, have the empathy that you have towards the passion that you feel for where you belong, that somebody else can feel that about where they are. It doesn't make what they are doing right. It just means it gives you the empathy on how to therefore not just disparage. But I think what all the other things Yemi says about prayer, about keeping in touch, about pointing things here and there, the fact that you respect them earns their trust to be able to speak on the issues. The fact they are not always bringing it up over and over again, quite frankly, it earns their trust for you to speak into it at various points. But at the end of the day, it's the Lord that does that work. So be there, occasionally send them a material here and there, and all of that. For me, Fumi's question is really about, if I may put it, if I may summarize it, how do I reach Gen Z? Right. And so it first means you have to recognize who is Gen Z. Now, if I may use some social categories, used in the West, but actually also affects us in Nigeria. There have been about 4 or 5 generations since the Second World War. So the boomers are people that are born from 1945 to 1946. Sorry, 1946. So Second World War ended in 1945. So people born from 1946 to 1964. That's boomers, right? They behave in a certain way. Boomers are the most optimistic generation. Why? Because after the war, virtually the whole world was in rebuild. So the war, he that is down needs fear no fall. So boomers were born where everything was down. Most of their parents. And so all they ever experienced was things were going better. So have you ever heard when someone say, in our day, we used to all have milk in secondary school? In public, your parents have never told you that? They are boomers. Do you understand? So it's with boomers they said that our children will be better than us. And our children's children will be better. They were the most optimistic generation, but it was a blip in human history. It was never guaranteed that this next generation will be after, but boomers were there. Following on the tails of boomers, 1965 to, depending on who you're talking to, 1983, 1981, or what have you, you have what you call Gen Y, Generation Y. All right? So this was a generation that, in many ways, were more educated. Very educated a generation. That's why if you look here, so boomers got educated, but Gen Ys got really educated because a lot of the universities, University of Ibadan was set up in 1948. So a lot of the Gen Ys, it was, you will go to university. And so a lot of the top jobs today are held by people in Gen Ys, right? So there's Gen Y. Now, from like 84 or 82 to 96 is the one we've been speaking about for the last 10 years. Everybody likes to bash them. They're called millennials. Allah says. All right, millennials. And millennials are the most unfortunate generation. Yeah, millennials, to be honest, millennials have had, in 10 years, in their own generation, they've had 2 economic crises. Millennials are the generation where, I'll be richer than my parents. That bubble burst. Millennials are the generation where, at this age now, you should have bought a car. Millennials that are like 37, I've not bought my own car except it was given to me. I've not built a house except it was. Do you get? Millennials are, broken promises. Now you have the older millennials, the ones that were born in the 80s, and then you have the younger millennials. Now Gen Z is now about 1997 to about 2011, 2012. So anybody that is between maybe nine-ish to about 23. But now we're talking about a lot of those now. When we talk about really Gen Zs, we're talking a lot about the people who are in their teenage years up until the early 20s. Here's the thing about them. They're a peculiar generation. They are, an irreverent generation. They don't care about, if you talk respect, but you are speaking on deaf ears. Just watch them on Twitter. Do you understand? They don't care. Your pastors and all of those things, they don't care. Because they are reverent towards God. So F.U. God is a very, very acceptable Gen Z thing. They are also they are fascinated with the dark. They are the first generation to fully embrace mental illnesses. Gen Zs were, a lot of Gen Zs were denying it, but, a lot of millennials were denying it, but the younger ones started accepting it. Gen Zs And boomers like, what's that? Let's go and pray and deliver you from that. We are not this. They are the confession generation. So the Gen Zs are irreverent. They don't care much for authority, and they are dark. They are dark because they are the ones that inherited what the millennials have. So this world, they are questioning meaning. You look, just go on YouTube and see people who are Gen Zs and look at the songs that they sing. The instrumentalism, it is dark. So if you are going to reach people, let us be like how Jesus did. Let's be exactly like Jesus. Let's not take examples from. Don't go and start thinking of Billy Graham or thinking of. Let's allow Jesus to be our model for evangelism. What did Jesus do? He met people where they were, but he gave them himself. He met people where they were, he gave them himself. You can't force down an authority structure on a Gen Z person. How dare you say that? How dare I not say that? What? I said it. And if you too. It's for challenging me. So you can't play auntie-uncle with them. You can't play auntie-uncle with them. You have to speak to them in some ways as equals. Meet them there. One. Two is that if you are somebody that does not believe in mental health, if you have all those, I'm not saying that you can't believe what you don't believe what you believe. Just don't carry that and go and speak to them. Like if you're going to bring all this, it doesn't exist, just get up, just leave it for somebody else that actually does believe in it. So for them, credibility matters in the things that you affirm. So if you are speaking with them, don't come opposing those things. Let them know, so you're feeling this. And if you are somebody who has gone through mental health issues too, man, it helps you to say, oh, is that how you feel? I remember when I was depressed. Depressed? Christian, depressed? How are you? So all of a sudden, that buys you credibility. And because I believe in it, I can show, people from the Bible, from Elijah to Paul and all of that had all of those things. So you are meeting them. Anytime you want to do evangelism to a group of people, a certain guy, Tim Keller, said this. There are what we call A beliefs and B beliefs. A beliefs are common beliefs you have. B beliefs are the exclusive beliefs. So all this, our salvation, all these church things and all that, they are B beliefs. But A beliefs will be things like, do you believe that there's such a thing as mental illness? Do you believe that, there's such a social justice matters? Do you believe all of those things? So the problem we've always had with evangelism is that we lead with B beliefs. And what he's saying is that you lead with A beliefs so that you gain credibility and then you talk about the B things. So it's always about, what Jesus did was always about building credibility to build a bridge. First build the bridge. Then as you build the bridge, you have the language to be able to, then the last thing is use the language of A. And this is where you have to get skilled. Use the language of A to present the truths of B. You have to find ways. Use the language of A to present the truths of B. So that's what I would say. Resources, I think there's one I meant to purchase. It's the one there are not many, certainly not many resources written for a Nigerian audience. So, but the good thing is that also both millennials and Gen Zs are very global. They are very global. So they live, especially the ones on the internet and the ones whose parents are not poor. But even everybody has smartphone today. If thank God for Infinix and what's the other one? Techno. You understand? So I'm sorry. It slipped my mind. It slipped my mind. I know it. I know techno. Wow. All right. So Mid-Generation Z, Understanding and Reaching the New Post-Christian World. It's by James Emery White. Mid-Generation Z, Understanding and Reaching the New Post-Christian World. James Emery White. Okay. I'll send it to Temdai. And then Temdai will send it to you. Because I don't have WhatsApp. You need a time that what? To Temdai. How about now? It's been sent. All right. Should women be housewives? Only. Exclusively housewives.
Yeah, so Titus 2:5. Always good to see the scripture. I'll read 4 and 5.
Okay.
I read 3 to 5. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good, Then they can urge the younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind, and to be subject to their husbands, so that no one would malign the word of God. Similarly, encourage the young men to be self-controlled, and it goes. So he's giving instructions to different groups, and you would find similar instructions at the end of a letter to masters or business owners, or masters to slaves, to different groups of people like that. But Paul, I don't think in writing establishes any vocation for any gender at all. Neither does he establish, for example, that if you're a slave, you are meant to be a slave and you should stay a slave. It's just that as he's exposing the word of God, how we should live, and he gives all these great truths in scriptures, towards the end of those letters, he starts to talk about practical ways they should live in their different contexts. So the ones to slaves particularly is, if you find yourself as a slave, this is how you should conduct yourself. If you're a slave owner or employer, mostly employer because you had bonded servants, not just slave owners. If you're an employer, this is how you must conduct yourself as a Christian who has servants under him, and all these different groupings of people. And it's in that context he then speaks to women. In some places, there are instructions for widows. There's a particular life for widows. There are instructions for single people. So all these different phases of our lives. So no, there is no recommendation of a woman has to have a vocation in the house. But if a woman does have a vocation in the house, there's a way in which she's supposed to sort of build the house. That's what I would say. A quick answer.
Yeah. This question is filled with so many landmines. You have to know how to dodge them. Not because you want to please everybody, but actually I think the Bible's view, as Yemi started to show, is a bit more complex than that, because actually it's a complex situation. So first, my number one, what some people do in trying to answer this question is almost to say, can you imagine me a housewife? How can they sort of say women should be housewives? So you end up denigrating the very important role, the blessed role of being a housewife. Do you understand? So if you're a housewife, it's a calling from God. It's a beautiful calling. My wife was a housewife for a while. Wonderful. So if anybody came and talked about housewives anyway, and then you just like, my blood would just boil. All right? So it's a glorious calling. There's nothing demeaning about being a housewife. All right? So you want to run away from that. Now, the second one is like unto it. Right? Where you then say they are only meant to be housewives. Now, this passage does speak about that, as Yemi says, that if somebody was called to be a housewife, well, here are some of the things. But take, for instance, one of the things that just defeats that is, what if she wasn't a wife? So so she's a house what? Daughter? Or, okay. What did she lives? But I'm just saying there's no house. A house what? Exactly. House, which one? So this is the problem of taking a part of scripture which is saying a particular thing, and you are saying that with that particular verse we can absolutize and generalize everything. It's not always the case. Sometimes it is, but it's not. And then you look at Paul, who is writing here, his own experiences. So in Acts 16, Paul meets a woman who most likely is the person whose house the church in Philippi started in. Her name is Lydia. He says she's a seller of purple. He said her purple. Why didn't she sell blue? Why didn't she sell white? Let me tell you, purple was when you say top lace, the top lace kind, like it was, the top velvet, not akpoche kind of. You understand? Like satin, the top satin. That was purple was always seen as regal. So Lydia was like a business. She was a merchant. You understand? A woman of means. Paul has spoken about in Romans 16, verse 1 and 2, he speaks about Phoebe. Some people know as Phoebe, but we'll leave that. The person that said that, I'm speaking to the person. All right. Phoebe too was actually a woman of means. Now, we don't know. All indications were when Paul met Lydia that Lydia was single. All indications look like she was single. Right? Because they would have mentioned her husband if in those times, it was still patriarchal no matter what. So the question is, what does she do? Must she give up her business now she has become a Christian? And then you read Proverbs 31 as well. While the woman was domestic, because they lived in an agrarian society. But you can also see that the woman was quite industrious as well. So the calling of a housewife, if God calls you to that, is beautiful, it's wonderful, as any calling is to any Christian. And so thinking, and it mentions the historical grammatical doesn't tell you anything. It tells you that, yes, he was speaking to housewives in that verse. It doesn't say that he's speaking to wives as housewives all throughout. Okay, so let me take one more on the issue of city church. You probably do that long, or maybe we'll take that one next week. So let's just end with this one on work. Yeah. Final one we'll take is, they said, is city church a Reformed or Calvinist church? Do you hold to all the doctrines of grace and that is TULIP? So just for people who may not understand what that question means, every churches emerge in traditions. One of the most wonderful things and the worst things that's happened in church in the last 40 years, most wonderful and worst, is the rise of non-denominations. I say it's wonderful and bad because we are one of them. So it's given a whole lot more freedom, and it has increased mission, evangelism, and all of that, because once you're part of a denomination, you have so many rules that you have to follow, and so many times you're unable to do certain things and all of that. Non-denominations, they are riskier, they are bolder, they do certain things because they become church plants and all of that. It's wonderful. The bad thing about it is that it allows for less accountability, and sometimes a sense of rootedness, a sense of historical rootedness. If somebody is in an Anglican church, you know the historical rootedness all the way to Thomas Chalmers? Yeah. So you can trace all of those things. Somebody is Methodist, you can trace it to the Wesleyans and all of those things. But with non-denominations, you trace it to the founder. All right? So there's some problem there, accountability. Some people can, the founder's word is all of those. So it's a mixed bag. Now, a lot of the churches that were historically rooted, were not just rooted in structures, they were also rooted in certain beliefs. So as an Anglican, for instance, you have to hold to the 39 Articles of the Faith. The Book of Common Prayer also unites all Anglicans, right? The Baptists, depending, you can do 1689 Baptist Confession, you can do 2000 faith and Baptist Faith Message and all of those. So there are things, if you are Presbyterian, Westminster Confession of Faith, these things codified certain beliefs that if I claim myself to be of this tradition, then I believed in this, right? If you say you're a Pentecostal assembly or Assemblies of God or let's say Apostolic Faith, you had certain beliefs that you held to. So what this person is asking is that there was a certain tradition that ran through certain Baptist churches and ran through Presbyterian churches and ran through some other historical denominations of how you understand the way salvation works. We all know that we are saved through faith in Christ and you receive the Holy Spirit, but then you start getting into things like the structure of it and the sequence of it. So, for instance, the Bible will say, yes, you are saved if you believe, but it also talks about predestination and election. And so, settling the question on, did God choose people before time, knowing these are the people that will believe in him? Or did God choose the people so that they believed in him? You get the distinction. Did God choose the people knowing that in time, they will be the people that believe in him, that when the message was presented, they will believe? Or did he choose them first, and then in time, because they were chosen, the elect, that they believe? So that's one question. Another question is, when we say somebody is born in sin, how much has sin marred that person? Is it possible for the person not to sin, but they just sin? Or is it impossible for the person not to sin? And as a result of that, they will not put their faith in Christ, even if you present them? That's a question that needs to be answered. Another question is, if the Holy Spirit works on somebody for salvation, can they resist it or not resist it? Another question is, if you're a Christian genuinely saved, can you lose your salvation? So those 5 questions, this group of people called Reformed had a certain answer. There was a response to some other people that gave some answers to those 5 questions. And these other people said, no, these are our own answers to those questions. So it's just looking at the issue of salvation, how salvation works, and do you believe in a certain way. So I've laid the foundation to the person that asked, yes, we are a Reformed church in that regard. We're a Reformed church. We believe in the doctrines of grace. And if you want to see that, our teaching podcast is called Theology in Lagos. And we did a series on, am I free? Am I truly free? And then how salvation works, 1, 2, and 3. So you can check that out. And any of you interested in that, you can check that out, listen to it. I think it will help.
So may I say something that people who understand or who hold on to doctrines of grace can explain it really well, and they can explain it really badly. And if you've been around, you know exactly what I'm speaking of. And a lot of people who try to who hold their traditions more important than the Christian faith, who have so much pride in it that is their joy to tell you that they belong to this tradition and that you are excluded from that tradition, or that you need to join that tradition, otherwise you won't be reckoned with, can go to great lengths to explain those individual points in ways that are exclusionary, that sort of pushback. So you have to be aware of those kinds of people, or those ways of explaining it. And that's why I think it's really important to listen to the podcast, because I think when you hear it spoken well, you say, yeah, okay, yeah, I sort of understand that, even though I may still have other questions that come with that. As opposed, and if you've had any sort of terrible experiences with those kinds of people, I'm saying don't judge until you listen to the podcast. That's a necessary response.
Yeah, and I'll just add, not only on that issue. If you are here, you believe certain things, like certain things in distinction to others. Maybe you feel that no children should be baptized. Maybe you feel like speaking in tongues is necessary. Maybe you feel like you are meant to tithe a 10% of your whatever. Maybe, you see, there are many questions that, see, first of all, just does somebody believe that Jesus Christ is the only way to salvation? Do you believe that God is 3 and 1? Do you believe that Jesus is divine and human? And do you believe he's coming back again? If you see, those questions are the most important ones. If you do that, the other person is your brother, and then we can have a good spirited debate, but not a debate that then shows that we are more divided than we are united. And so I'll just say the reason why maybe somebody's asking that is because we've not explicitly called ourselves a Reformed church, even though we believe in it, we celebrate it, and all of those things. But we're also very careful in that, in the beliefs that we have, we don't want it to be a sign of our division. We want it to be a sign of our distinction, but not of division with other Christians. So when you know where we stand, and maybe you disagree with that, then we can have healthy conversation. So let's always be careful that the secondary beliefs you hold, you don't use them as a way to condemn other Christians, to look down on them, to divide. God wants us all to be one. Amen? All right, God bless you.